Hello, welcome to Steph's World. Let's see, Spiritual Foundations, Chapter 30, Part 2. Now, I've done this before where I have to go somewhere, so I'm probably going to try to create this earlier, and hopefully it'll be all right later and put it out for everybody. I'll check it and everything, make sure the sound quality is good. Since I've been using my new computer, I've noticed I do have an issue with sound. I do have a headset that I could set up, but I hate using those things. And when I used my other computers, I never had any issues. So I've even considered going back to that. But the picture quality is so nice with this new computer. You can see those roses in the background. One of my best friends in the Kansas City, Missouri area sent those to me for Christmas, and they're just beautiful. I'm going to talk about that just briefly because something happened yesterday. Well, I don't know when it actually really happened, but yesterday is when I discovered it. Just outside of my house, or the front door, I have a little walkway that leads to my driveway. And for my own personal reasons, I don't keep my car in the garage, which I should because it's a fairly new car. And, I should. Let's put it that way. We occasionally get some pretty deep storms around here. But anyway, yesterday, before I even went out to check my mail and do my normal routines, I started to smell something in the house, and it actually smelled like, something had died, or it had that dead smell. Now, I know that smell for a number of reasons, and because I've had dead animals, sadly, in my life, or I've even, well, I don't want to get into that, but I know the smell. So I knew that there was something that had died close by. Well, when I went out to check the mail, then I came back, I heard flies. So I started looking around, and lo and behold, I saw the part of the body of an animal that I knew was dead. And we have a cat that hangs around. It belongs to the people across the street. And I thought, oh my goodness, that may be the cat. So I don't know if it is, but later today I'm going to go find out. And if it is, I'm going to have to tell them I am very, very sorry. I have no idea what happened to your cat, but it came over to my house and it died. Now, that's a terrible thing to have to tell people, especially when they have children. And, the children love their animals. I know, my kids did too. And I loved them. So it really is a horrible thing to have to do. But it's the right thing to do. So I am going to do it. Anyway, when that happened, it was hard. I mean, it made me cry, about this poor little animal that maybe I wasn't so nice to at times. It was irritating. He was I call it a he because I think it was a tomcat. But it would hang out around my backyard all the time because it loved, wanted to get to the bird's nest. I mean, this cat was definitely a hunter. No question about that. But I have no idea what killed it. None. And I know something it ate must have done it to it, or either that it was sick and maybe it was its time to pass on. Anytime a creature in God's world dies. I'm sad that they are leaving, but yet, on the other hand, I should be happy because, that's part of God's plan. And that's how I look at it, really. Now, something really horrible happened just recently that I know a lot of people know about. It's hard to imagine so many children being killed, but that happened in our country. And when I read about it and watched it on TV, I went into a state of shock. And I started sobbing uncontrollably. And I called my daughter, and I was sobbing, just literally sobbing. And my daughter had to help calm me down. And I was, through the sobs, I asked her if she had spoken to her children about the horrible, horrible thing that we had learned about regarding these children. And my daughter understood why it affected me so severely. I lost my child, not even, almost 2 years ago now. His anniversary is coming up. That's always a very tough time for all of us, not just me, for his father, for all the people that loved him. Very, very tough time. And it's coming up. So, a lot of, I guess, a combination of things upset me. And, but I wrote a blog about, getting through this as a parent. And that incident that happened to those 4 children inspired me to write that blog. I tried to make it a positive blog. It was a true accounting of where I'm at today with the passing of my son. And as I've mentioned many, many times, I don't like to say dead because I don't believe that their spirit, their spiritual being, is dead at all. And I think that I've made that pretty clear. Now, there's something real quick before we get back on to where we were before on our journey within it about Sermon on the Mount by Jesus the Christ. And I want to talk to you, before I talk to you about shame and guilt, okay? Because it's such a big issue for human beings. Shame and guilt can cause us to do terrible things to ourselves and to other people. And I think our news is showing that right now. I think some of the activities that have happened are showing us right now what shame and guilt can create. The terrible chaos and terrible things within us that it creates. Horrible, horrible things. Now, as I said in part 1, there are ways to extract that out of you. And when I get done with this series, I'm going to talk about some of the ways that we can do that I've learned that help me to get rid of some of that shame and guilt. And trust me, my parents put a lot in. I mean, they didn't know they were doing it. Okay? Let's make that clear. Parents don't even realize that they're doing it. They have no idea. And I guess that's why I'm bringing it up. I'm trying to help new parents. Hey, just be careful what you say to your little child or as you're raising them. That's all. You don't have to listen to me, but I did raise several children. And in addition to that, I was raised, and after I got older, I had a lot of therapy over some of that raising because some of that raising was pretty horrendous. And I've written about it, and pretty soon I'm going to switch it over and make it into a real book. Now, it'll be a lot different when I do that, but right now you can read it about me. It's just my memoirs about myself. But anyway, on Google Plus, I made a comment, or I wrote a comment about Jesus Christ, and I talked about Jesus being a mystic. Now, there was somebody else that, and the whole conversation just came out of the blue, too. I don't even know why we were even discussing religion or spirituality in any way. I have no idea why that even came up. The original conversation that I had was about our political situation in our country, the gun control that I'm afraid may be coming up, okay? And the reaction of our lawmakers, rather than thinking things through, I think they're becoming more reactive. And that was what the piece that I wrote, it wasn't a blog, but it was a little bit of a piece that I wrote, and that's what it really was about. But somebody got into it a little more deeply than what I really expected, or, didn't even want to really share on it, to be honest with you, because as I said to him, I think that's a conversation for another discussion. But he continued with it. So at one point, I made a comment about Jesus Christ because he had brought Jesus up. And I said that I felt that Jesus was a mystic or mystical, something along those lines. And when I said that, he overreacted, and I really, believe me, there was definite overreacting here on his part. I could sense the anger in his response to me about, I'd mentioned that I had several books that talked about Jesus Christ being a mystical human being. Emmett even refers to him as mystical and tells us that in the Bible it actually does refer to him as mystical in some areas of the Bible. Now, I can't tell you where those are because I'm not a Bible expert and I would never profess to be one. Although that doesn't mean I don't read the Bible. I do. Now, when I've read that and when I get to that part of Emmett Fox, I'll be happy to share that part with everybody. Now, let me tell you what I did, though. I decided to look mystical up and get the true definition of it. Because why would anybody be so upset about calling somebody as wonderful as Jesus Christ mystical? Why? I don't understand that. I was really surprised. Well, let me tell you what the definition of mystical does mean. Now, there's a lot of different definitions that go along with it. But these right here were A's and B's, and they're pretty important. A, having a spiritual meaning or reality that is neither apparent to the senses nor obvious to the intelligence. Okay, so that means that maybe a mystical type person would be somebody that at times we may not understand them as well as we would like, maybe intellectually. We have difficulty. Maybe they're on a level spiritually that we're not. Now, Jesus Christ, I believe that. I believe that we were not on that level. Now, he told us that we could be on that level, though, and even more. Now, those were his words, not verbatim, but that's what's in the Bible. Okay, the second thing was B, involving or having the nature of an individual's direct subjective communion with God or ultimate reality. The mystical appearance of the inner light. That's an example. Okay, then I have some other examples. One, he has a mystic union with God. Two, a mystical journey in search of God. Okay, now, who does that sound like? I would say it sounds like Jesus the Christ, wouldn't you? Yeah, me too. So I hope that he watches my video so he understands that this is true stuff. Look it up, Merriam-Webster Dictionary. Check out mystical, and you'll find out what it really means. Okay? Now I don't have much time, as usual, so I'm going to get right to it. Now this is part 2, and we were reading Sermon on the Mount. Okay? Now, I stopped at this part right here. I'm going to start right here. It is our most sacred duty, out of loyalty to God Himself, to refuse to accept anything less than all-round happiness and success. And we shall not be following out the wishes and instructions of Jesus if we do accept less. Okay, now everybody understands what that means, right? Jesus wanted us to be happy. Jesus wanted us to have success. All around happiness and success. Okay? That's what is being said here. Now, we are to pray and meditate and reorganize our lives in accordance with His teaching continuously and untiringly until our goal is attained. I have one question though. Does anyone really seriously think they can attain that in this lifetime? Just something to think about. Okay? Just a little thought, food for thought here. It's something, we're talking about some big stuff here. And frankly, I'm 59 years old, and 19 years ago, basically, almost 19 years ago, I'm getting close to my anniversary now, was when something profound happened to me in my life and changed my whole way of thinking. And it didn't just boom happen. I mean, it took a little time. But some of the things that brought it about were boom happened. And that's some of the stuff I'm trying to write about in my book. And it's pretty interesting, pretty amazing. But anyway, let me continue. That this attainment, that our victory over every negative condition is not merely possible, but is definitely promised to us, finds its proof in these glorious words, the ensign of freedom for mankind. Ask, and ye shall receive. Seek, and ye shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened unto you. These are Jesus' words as we know them. Okay? Keep in mind that portions of the Bible, most of the Bible in fact, was actually handwritten a couple of centuries later. But from what we know, these are the words of Jesus the Christ. And you all know why I call Jesus Jesus the Christ, because Christ means, the, oh shoot, sorry about this. The enlightened one, that's one of the meanings. There's several meanings. In fact, we went over it with in one of my previous ones. Emmett gave a wonderful definition of it. And I'll have to go back to that to give it back to you. We really want to get into it. But anyway, the word Christ is not his last name. And so I make it a point of not calling Jesus that way. I truly do. Okay, so then he says, therefore all things whatsoever ye would that men should do to you, do ye even so to them. For this is the law and the prophets. Okay, now we have a law. All right, let me reread that. Therefore, all things whatsoever ye would that men should do to you, do ye even so to them. For this is the law and the prophets. Okay, now let's see. This is Matthew, by the way. This is the sublime precept that we call the golden rule. Now, everybody's heard of the golden rule, right? I'm sure of that, okay? Here Jesus reiterates the great law in a concise summing up. Now, I do want to say something about the golden rule and the fact that, yes, Jesus told us about it, but Jesus wasn't the only one who talked about the golden rule, okay? I can honestly tell you that there were other people, other prophets in our world that were given, that wonderful law and passed it on to us in other countries. Honest to goodness, really. It didn't happen. And Jesus gave it to us, and that's the one that most people can think of and remember. But if you live in China, there were other Chinese prophets that also gave you the golden rule. If you lived in the Middle East and other parts, I think the Quran probably has a golden rule, and I'm going to check that out, to be honest with you. I've been slowly but surely reading that holy book too. And you all know, if you've watched my videos, that I honor and respect all holy books, every one of them. Okay, so it's a wonderful statement of the fatherhood of God. Okay, that's how Emmett puts it. The underlying explanation for the existence of the great law is the metaphysical fact that we are all fundamentally one, all parts of the great mind. Because we are all ultimately one, to hurt another is really to hurt oneself. And to help another is to really help oneself. Sound confusing? Not really. It's not. Just think of it like that. If you go out and hurt someone, sorry about that. If you go out and hurt someone, you are hurting yourself. If you help someone, you're actually helping yourself. I have found that in my own life. On many occasions, that has exactly happened to me. Okay? Now, so then it goes on to say that the fatherhood of God compels us to accept the brotherhood of man. And spiritually, brotherhood is unity. So we're learning some metaphysics here. Okay? So spiritually, brotherhood is unity. That makes sense, doesn't it? The understanding of this great truth includes within itself all other religious knowledge, and is, in the old phraseology, law and the prophets. See, the prophets, Jesus mentioned the prophets in this, right? So essentially, what I got out of it was that, and I think Emmett was trying to say this too, was that Jesus was reiterating some great laws that were already presented to us, human beings, in different places by different prophets. How could just one prophet spread the words back in those days? Think about it. How could one prophet do that? Think about that. It's a miracle. Of course, Jesus was a miracle, because it's over 2,000 years. Well, it's not quite over 2,000, not really, when we believe that he was here on earth and, began his preaching and everything, sermons. And so we're pretty close to 2,000 years, and we still are studying what this Son of God gave us. And I will definitely call Jesus the Son of God. Absolutely. There's no question in my mind. Now, but he was also a prophet of God. He had he had messages to give us. Not just one, but a whole way of living, actually. He came here to help us learn how to live properly and good and right. So he had a lot of messages. And Sermon on the Mount, which is what we're studying right now, is one of the greatest sermons known to mankind. And that's what Emmett says earlier in the book. I mean, he wrote a whole book on it. So that tells you something right there. Okay. Now, here we go again. Enter ye in at the strait gate. For wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction. Many there be which go thereat. Because strait is the gate, and narrow is the way which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it. Okay, now let's see what Emmett says about that. Okay. There is only one way under the sun by which man can attain harmony. Harmony. Okay. That is to say, health, prosperity, peace of mind, salvation, in the true sense of the word. And that is by bringing about a radical and permanent change for the better in his own consciousness. Our own consciousness. This is the one and only way. There is no other. For countless generations, humanity has been trying in every other conceivable way to compass its own good. Innumerable schemes have been designed to bring about happiness by making changes of some sort in man's external conditions, while leaving the quality of his mentality untouched. And always the result has been the same, failure. Okay? So, I hope everybody understands what I just read, because it may sound complicated, but it really isn't. Okay? It's talking about the way that humanity has tried to change itself for its own good. Okay? We're seeing it right now in the world. We're seeing exactly this. That's why I'm doing these special things right now, these special videos to help you get ready for whatever may be coming, to be strong spiritually for whatever may be coming. This is why. You must have a sense of yourself. You must believe in yourself. And if you don't, there are ways for you to go about doing that, which I have talked about in earlier videos. Now, again, we say in here, he says, we are now in a position to see why this must be so, that it is because the very nature of our being is such that it is only by a change in consciousness that outer conditions can really be altered. So we have to change ourselves first before we can change the world, or what our world is, okay? Let me put it that way, all right? Maybe we can't change the whole wide world, but at least if we change ourselves, we're making a start. And that's what Emmett tells us, all right? And I believe that's what Jesus told us too. All right, now, this change in consciousness is the straight gate that Jesus speaks of here. And as he says, the number of those who find it is comparatively small. Now that's kind of sad when you think about it. Comparatively small. Okay? But don't be sad about that, because we're going to get into this a little deeper, and things will be explained. Now, today that number is increasing with great rapidity, though indeed it is still comparatively small. But at the time that Jesus spoke, it was very much smaller still. Well, it certainly was, because they were still living with the Old Testament. And when you go from the Old Testament to the New Testament, it's like a whole new way of thinking. Boom. You know, that's one way of thinking, and then it's like going from black to white. It really is, in my personal opinion. Now, I've had that experience. I've, read both of them periodically throughout my life, and that's how I always felt. Like I went from one thing to another, and it was like night and day. It really was. Okay, now this doctrine that what matters is one's consciousness, because your own concept is what you see. Okay? Jesus calls the way of life, and that's in caps, by the way. Remember, when Emmett does things in caps, it's important. The way of life. And he says that all other doctrines are but a broad road to destruction or disappointment. Now, why should man be so reluctant, apparently, to try to change his consciousness? Okay? Why would we be so reluctant about that? Why do we continue to live in that consciousness that may not be good for us? Remember I talked about some of that consciousness, shame and guilt? That's something that people probably need to look at if they have it. Because when you have those emotions inside of you, and they are emotions or they are feelings, they are actually feelings inside of a person. And but the good news is that we can get rid of those feelings. It can be so simple. It'd be unbelievable how easy it is. But you have to work at it. It's not simple to do. You definitely have to work at it. So That's kind of what he's talking about here, your consciousness, changing some of these things, okay? This doctrine that what matters is one's consciousness because your own concept is what you see. Jesus calls the way of life, and he says that, okay, I already read that, I'm sorry. Let's see, where did I stop? Why is it that he seems to prefer to try almost any other method, however arduous or even far-fetched it may be? All through history, every other conceivable way has been tried to bring about the salvation of humanity. And of course, all have failed. As we know now that they must, and yet man will seldom try the straight way until he is driven to it individually by irresistible pressure. For instance, let's say you have a problem with alcohol. There's a lot of people that do. Maybe you overdrink. Maybe you've even gotten in trouble from it. Okay? A lot of times people say that a person that has that kind of problem has to have a bottom, what we call a bottom, which means they have to hit some kind of like a wall in their life to bring them to reality, to the concept that maybe they need to change their consciousness, that they're doing something that's hurting them and they're not even sure why. So now they're going to find out. Okay? You know, I'm noticing something doesn't seem right with my webcam. So if that's the case, I apologize. And we're getting pretty late, so let me finish this up and then we'll stop. The answer is that we have already seen the changing one's consciousness, and it's really very hard work, calling for constant, unceasing vigilance and a breaking of mental habits, which is sure to be very troublesome for a time. The natural man is lazy, always tend to take the line of least resistance. Now, there's a lot of theories about that, and exactly that theory is one of them. And so in this, as in lesser matters, he does not get down to bedrock principles until he is compelled to. I'm going to stop there for now, and we'll talk about the way of life and the straight gate in our next chapter. But we're slowly but surely moving through Sermon on the Mount. And it's part of Sermon on the Mount is being defined by Emmett Fox. Thank you.